Mark, I'd like to, in this one, explore an end to upside down living, reorienting our consciousness to live better and save the human species, which you published in 2020. Could you give me a brief overview of what that was about, please?
This was a follow-on to my first book, An End to Upside Down Thinking.
Mhm.
And many people read that first book, which talks about the idea that the brain does not produce consciousness and that things like psychic phenomena and the survival of our consciousness after bodily death, that those are real things and there's scientific evidence, peer-reviewed research, declassified documents from the CIA, research from the University of Virginia, their Division of Perceptual Studies, and so forth. And people would say to me, wow, okay, there's a lot of validity to this crazy sounding idea that maybe we are spiritual beings and we're tapping into something rather than being purely physical. But then how should I live my life?
Mm.
How should I actually approach life differently? So that's what this book is, An End to Upside Down Living.
Gotcha.
And it chronicles a little bit of my own journey. So there's an aspect of it that's autobiographical, more
Mm.
so than any of my other books. But it's a compilation of spiritual teachings from teachers that I respected and when I was writing it, and the ones that shaped my perspectives. So my hope is that that book, which is, I believe, the shortest one I've written,
Mm.
is a quick guide for anyone on this path who's learning, okay, maybe there's more to life than meets the eye. How should I think about reorienting my consciousness, setting my compass in a new direction?
Mm.
And that leads to new priorities and ways of living.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So I think your book challenges the idea that external achievements bring lasting happiness. That's certainly something that I found to be completely untrue. Could you share a personal memory from your life before the paradigm shift where you achieved something major that was important to you, but you found the fulfillment to be fleeting?
Basically, my whole life up to that point. I'll just give a few things,
Yeah,
Adrian, of things that I was striving for that seemed like they were so coveted.
yeah.
Um, I was really interested in my academics and I was a competitive tennis player in high school. So even though I was social, I was constantly stressed out about these other things. I wanted to get good grades and I got into Princeton,
Hmm.
which at the time it was the number one ranked school and that mattered a lot to me. My tennis coach there, he was a former professional player, former number one in the world in doubles and top 50 in singles. So that
Hmm.
was like the best I could do for
Hmm.
someone who was striving so much. And what happened? I got there and there were great things about it, but then it was just on to the next thing of, oh, now you have a lot of really smart, competitive people in one place and they all want to get a coveted finance job. And there are only so many of them, so not everyone can get it. And then I got a finance job. I worked at UBS, a large investment bank in New York on Park Avenue
Hmm.
in 2008. And then I'm there with the people that got all the finance jobs. And then everyone's competing for the next
Yeah.
job in the investment world. And what I was finding as I was moving up these ladders is that many people were not genuinely happy.
Hmm.
And so a light bulb went off and I said, I see where this is going. It wasn't until 2016 that I really just figured out what the shift was. But as I was moving on, I
Hmm.
realized that I didn't have a sense of meaning or purpose behind what I was doing other than just trying to win.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. You talk in the book about moving from having and doing to being. What's the biggest internal challenge that you still face? And it's things that I face too, I'm sure, in maintaining a state of being when the world just wants to push us towards doing all the time.
To me, it comes down to surrender
Hmm.
and trust. If there is a higher intelligence that's involved in our reality, meaning that the causal mechanisms behind things, the reason that things happen in life are not purely because of physical interactions of matter, then we have to acknowledge the possibility that there's meaning and purpose behind what this intelligence is doing in our world.
Hmm.
So there could be things happening in our life that we don't understand exactly, and there could be higher purpose and even benefit to challenging situations or to periods of the unknown.
Hmm.
So there is a level of trust required to say, I think I want this, or I think I don't want that, but I really don't know what's best, or I don't know where my life is going. And to trust that this nonlinear causal mechanism that's highly intelligent, higher consciousness, will steer life in ways that we can't appreciate.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a bit like you and I are walking around in the woods in the forest and we can't see beyond the trees. But if you had a high view from a big hill nearby, you'd have a better sight line of what was going on.
I give a similar analogy in my book, An End to Upside Down Living, where a
Yeah,
person's walking through a maze
yeah,
and they have these high walls up and they can only see what's immediately in front. But if you had a helicopter's perspective, you could see the entire maze and where you're headed.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I've been thinking about that metaphor for years now, and it is still a challenge. And I will say this for your audience's benefit, that there might be certain areas of life where it feels easier to surrender, where it's like, oh, I've got that pretty well covered. But then life seems to push us in the areas where we're not fully surrendered.
Yeah.
And that's where the challenge comes in to say, okay, why am I getting so uptight? I'm speaking to myself right now too. Okay, why am I getting so uptight about this? There's something going on and maybe it's beyond my control. I just need to sit into that. It's almost like a feather floating in the wind,
Yeah.
or something in a current of a stream, of sort of aligning with the current, but then letting it take you.
Yeah. Be like a cork and float on the water.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's cool. So could you think of maybe 3 core principles that, based on your research and your journey so far, you'd say would be the most useful or essential for the listener to practice to align with that stream of consciousness? And where would they even start with that?
For me, it was intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
So having a clear understanding, whatever it takes to do that, whether it's through a direct experience, like a near-death state, or meditation, or some people for psychedelics or breathing exercises, that can give people a direct understanding, depending on the experience they have. And then there's an intellectual exercise, which is learning about the science of non-local consciousness, of the idea that there is a spiritual reality. And that will, I think, inherently help people to just flow into it. And then I think once that understanding is there, having some practice to continue to dip into the understanding, because we can get lost into everyday life. And that's why some people, they'll want to meditate a few hours a day. They're going to have breathing exercises that they do, or have a few minutes to do, maybe it's music, something that gets them into a state of flow, for sure. And the third thing that comes up is have mentors. And that could be teachers, friends, someone to keep you in check and to provide these reminders, because we all have blind spots. Even the most highly advanced, enlightened spiritual teachers, I think that as human beings, we have blinders on. We can't see everything. And it's important from the perspective of humility also to have those third parties keeping us in check.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'd agree with all of that as well. So if we're all connected to, we're all connected in one stream of consciousness, you mentioned the golden rule. Could you explain what the golden rule is, please?
The idea that we should treat others well because we are all interconnected. There's a saying, we should treat others the way that we would like to be treated. I think that applies except for masochists, because a masochist would have a different view on this. But the general principle is that if we are all one on some level, then you would want to treat someone well because you are them. It would be irrational to harm someone. And traditions all over the world say this in different ways. In my book, and Upside Down Living, I list quotes from various religions and spiritual traditions. There's a phenomenon in the near-death experience. It's called a life review. When a person is in a state of little or no brain functioning, let's say cardiac arrest or some kind of major trauma, sometimes they relive their whole life in a small amount of time, and they become each person that they affected. So they feel the consequences of their actions on another person. In my podcast series, Where Is My Mind?, I interviewed Dannion Brinkley, who's had 4 near-death experiences and a life review each time.
Wow.
And he relived his combat days in Vietnam. He felt what it was like to kill someone in combat through that person's eyes, which was very painful for him. And he felt the effects on children who no longer had a father because he killed the father in combat. In his later life reviews, because he had changed his life so much, he became a hospice volunteer. And in the life review, got to experience what it was like to be the person dying in hospice as he comforted that person. So this is just the idea that perhaps the golden rule is built into the fabric of reality itself. It's not just some nice moral idea.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So I think, would it be fair to say then that being truly in service to others ultimately would serve ourselves, wouldn't it?
At some level of reality. And we might not always be able to see that in everyday life. So this does require some trust and faith to appreciate that what we experience and what we can access in our consciousness right now, even in terms of memory, is limited. There might be parts of our consciousness that we are not accessing right now that we know on some other level, or we have amnesia too. And that is a mind-blowing idea.
That is interesting. Is there anything else you want to add to this before we close this one off, Mark?
I think we covered a lot. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much.